Innovation is in our veins. Soon the whole world will know our names. Sharing our knowledge and freedom reign. We here for the people, you know it's our way. Setting foundations is part of the dream. It doesn't matter if you're new to the game. Listen up now, cause we all gon' say, elevate, 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 higher, elevate, 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 higher. We gon' rise up, we all gon' shine. Work through adversity, stay on the grind. Elevate, elevate, this is our time. Elevate, elevate.
Welcome to the Elevate Podcast, everyone. It's so great to have you all on one more time. It's your boy Josh.
And Reg.
And we're grateful to be back on with you yet again. Oh, baby, we got a good episode planned for you. First off, well, drama ensuing over Pierre Poilievre's use of words when it comes to the issues going on in BC with the all crack cocaine. And so much of the left getting upset about him saying that Trudeau legalized crack. Interesting how that's been going. Secondly, we'll be getting into the Canadian labor market. What is happening? Why are we seeing less of our teenagers getting entry-level jobs? What's happening there? And last but not least, well, Bank of Canada reports have come out and what's been happening there. And what is like the ins and outs and what can we expect here, the economy? And of course, a second last but not least is Secret Service being absolutely questioned to oblivion down in the States of what happened last week at Trump's rally. And why are we all of a sudden like, how did sloped roofs become the biggest security threat to the United States? I'm curious. We'll figure it out. It all happens that we're getting into it, all of it tonight, today, whenever you listen to this. Reg, how you feeling, big dog?
I'm doing good. Had an awesome weekend. I was out in the lake with really good people, out on a boat.
Let's go.
Got to learn how to use a jet ski because I've never used one before.
Oh.
I've realized it is the water motorcycle of my dreams.
Oh, it really is, dog.
I was like, I love this. I just want to go as fast as humanly possible. And I was like, but also this is not mine, so we're not doing that. And I do not know where all the rocks are, so we're going to be really respectful. And also, I may have indulged in a little too much of girls' night out. It is a alcoholic beverage, I'll say. I don't want to call it a wine because it doesn't deserve that label. But the story behind that is that when I lived with my brother, we were having a night and we had already had our ciders and he had his beers and stuff like that. And we were like, okay, what are we going to have? He's like, all that's left in the liquor cabinet is my roommate Irene's girls' night out. I was like, whip it out then. And so from then on, and whenever like when somebody had a birthday or a celebration or something, like just as a joke, you'd get them a girls' night out. So then when I was going down to this cottage weekend, I saw it there on the shelf at the NSLC, and I was like, it's going to be a girls' night out weekend. And I regretted every moment of it.
Gee.
I was a hurting unit, but we survived and we thrived afterwards. And so had a really, really good time with some really, really good people.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, that was not an ad. Unpaid ad here for Girls Night Out. Shout that out.
That's not an ad. Do not drink it. It's awful. Don't drink it.
It was made by the Chinese. That's what it was. Oh, no, that's actually pretty wild, dude. Well, I'm glad you had a good weekend, man. I had a good weekend myself. We finally the end of minor league lacrosse came this Sunday, where my boys finished it out with a league championship. We won. So there's only 3 tournaments that teams of our caliber are allowed to, enter in throughout the year. We won 1. What? We won 2. What? And we also won 3. The Triple Crown, baby. We finished it all off. The people were psyched. My boys were pumped. The parents were pumped. The parents stormed the floor. It was great. It was a lot of fun. I felt like I was at an NCAA college game. It was
great. Even the parents that were yelling at you all year, we're now cheering for you.
Go, Josh! We love you. Yeah, it was a good time. It was a fun year overall. The kids were great. Loved how they persevered. Even in that game, like every playoff game through like the league championship, we were down. We were losing at some point. Somehow managed a way. Like our second playoff game, we were down 6-1. Came back, won 8-7. Yesterday's championship game, we went down 4-0. Came back, won 9-8. So it was, we didn't make it easy on ourselves. We had to make it fun. So yeah, here.
I mean, those kind of games are the best to watch anyway, though. Everybody loves an underdog. I mean, I was really hoping for the Oilers to have that kind of a moment. They didn't. So I'm glad at least, your lacrosse guys got it.
Yeah, we were definitely not the underdog going to any of these games. We were by far the biggest favorite, but then got shelled in the first period every friggin' game. We're just like, well, I guess we're gonna have to dig ourselves out of this one. But it just showed you how great we really were.
Oh, there you go.
Exactly. It's like we only need 2 periods to show you how awesome we are. And so we'll give you one just to make you feel better, and then make you feel like you're part of this, and then we'll take it over. So,
yeah. And on that note, let's talk about people who are super great right now.
Super great. First off, yeah, we I think you had a good shout out here at the beginning of the episode. We our NSLCs are open here. Not so much in Ontario, unfortunately.
That's not true.
Oh, they opening back up?
They're opening back up.
Oh, wow. When? What's the date? What's the date?
I don't have a date for when they're
fake
officially
news.
open.
Fake news, brother. No, it's all that's good. But anyways, let's start with the news. What's going on?
Okay, well you kind of blew that one. So basically, Premier Doug Ford basically emphasizing that he's signed a deal with the LCBO that it will not be a dry summer for Ontarians. I do not know when they're officially back up and running. Some of them might actually already be in the process of reopening and reestablishing. But I think they realize that this is a significant money generator for various parts of their budget, and they need to get something signed. So they did. It's signed. So there you go, Ontario.
Your dry summer's coming to an end.
Exactly. But yeah, so the biggest piece of the news, though, Biden stepping down, quitting on a Sunday.
Oh.
And then immediately after going, and my support is for Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
As if that's going to really mean anything.
Yeah, it was, my favorite part about that was I think it was like literally a week ago when he was emphatically in front of people saying, I will not step down. I will defeat Trump. And then a week later, he got COVID. My president has COVID. Shout out Tim Dillon. And yeah, and then all of a sudden, shortly after that, he then steps aside, makes way for Kamala. And we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, well, you know that the Democrats have their convention in August. Mm-hmm. So that's when all the delegates and super delegates and all the fun people there will actually decide who's going to run.
Yeah, yeah. You don't get the Americans don't get to decide who gets to run for the Democratic Party. No, these really high paying special interests get to. And that sucks for anyone who's a Democrat. Oh, yeah. Looks like a big business has ruined your party. That's weird. Oh,
but on the other side of that coin, what was really interesting was watching the Republican National Convention.
Oh, yeah. Well,
and so I was catching those highlights after I came home from hockey, and you had already messaged me and I was on the ice, so I didn't get to see that. But very interesting watching that. I was like, because I've always grown up being like, Republicans are the worst, or the gun touting, like they're the ones that are, just going to send that country into hell in a handbasket, basically. And I was like, no way. I was watching some of that. I was like, they're talking about unifying the country. I actually took Trump's quote here. He said, where is it at?
Right here.
Yeah, this is a chance to bring the whole country, even the whole world, together. I was like, huh? What? What is this? And then it was funny because watching other people's reactions too, they were just like, this was like the most unifying thing I've seen in a while. And like, out of the Republican Party. What? Like, what is this?
Not just the Republican Party. It was Trump. One of the most divisive figures in the past 8 years.
Yeah, we literally went from grab him by the pussy to unite the world. Like, I was waiting for everybody to come out and Michael Jackson to come from the grave and just like sing, "We are the world." That's what I was waiting for.
Absolutely.
I mean, they had Hulk Hogan there, so why not?
Yeah, it was a good balance in terms of like, hey, we gotta take out the Democrats, got to take out Joe Biden. But then the feeling really was like, I think it was a great opportunity. I think good job on Trump to seize the opportunity, be like, hey, I know you don't like me. And that was his exact words. Mm-hmm. I humbly ask, even though you're not my biggest fan, that you take me as your president, you vote me in. And I'm like, the word humble is not a word I hear come out of Trump's mouth very often.
No.
And so I think it just, obviously when you have a scathe with death, that will change some things. But I think it's in some ways, he had the opportunity. He could have gone double down, punch him in the mouth. You tried to kill me, and now I'm going to come after you. But instead, he's taking the stance of like, no, this is an opportunity for all of us to come together. Let's like put this stuff behind us. Let's calm it down. Let's get focused on what actually is going to help Americans. And I have to give him credit, man. It was a well done speech that went That was the longest, and I think the longest all time. And good for him. 70 some years old, acting like he's 20, going forever, speaking. Pretty wild.
Yeah, like I said, I was impressed. What I thought was so weird though is now like seeing social media posts from Democratic supporters going like, you know, we need to support Kamala, but Kamala's also the worst. But you know what? Like, we can't have the insane rule of Trump. And I'm like, the guy just got shot at and came out speaking about, you know, harmony and unifying America. I'm like, who looks insane right now? I'm like, and then when you watch any of those videos of Kamala Harris, like talking her speech, oh my goodness. Like SNL killed it. Like, if you have a chance, go look up SNL's skit on Kamala Harris speeches. So good. They're so bad. They're so good.
Yeah. She's horrendous. Terrible politician. She makes Jagmeet look amazing. So
yeah. Anyway, that's a good segue into Canadian politics.
Hey-o.
So as we predicted last week, remember when we were talking about how Toronto was kind of a little underwater? They were having a bit of a rough go. And my in-laws being Torontonians, talking about how the DVP was like completely underwater. That's the Don Valley Parkway, and it's a major highway system in Toronto. And Trudeau coming out and saying, this is climate change. And he very quickly was roasted on the internet for that.
As he should have.
Because people were posting photos over the years of that same stretch of highway completely flooded.
Yeah.
And going, this has been going since the 30s and basically since this place was in existence. And what seems to kind of be missing people is the fact that it's like you can't pave over this entire land mass with impermeable surfaces and then go, man, it might rain or have a hurricane or some kind of storm, and then the water is just supposed to evaporate immediately.
Straight up, bro.
And they haven't been pouring any money into their infrastructure as far as like being able to deal with all the water that they are now collecting.
Well, that's why they're taxing it now.
Yeah, exactly, right? That's what I was going to say is like, but Olivia Chow. Like,
shout out Olivia.
Like, we going to tax that rain. So, I don't know. It's wild up there. I feel for you Ontarians. I feel for you Torontonians. You know, Josh and I both having a personal connection to that place. It's looking rough for you guys.
Yeah.
So,
well,
sorry.
I guess we can make fun of Olivia Chow for taxing the rain, but we legitimately get taxed for rain here. And Halifax is terrible. But
yeah,
that's a fun political story that we can get to at a different time. But yeah.
Yeah.
Do we want to get in the ditch tax? No.
I don't know. So just for your information, basically what happened was that Halifax Water started issuing bills to people who have wells, who don't have any kind of service with Halifax Water. And people were like, what the hell are you doing? And so large groups of people just haven't paid it.
Yeah.
And I've talked to people who haven't paid it in years. So I don't know. I don't think they have a legal ground to stand on if you don't have a file with them. So how can they be charging if you're not a customer?
Yeah.
Because they're not government, they're a separate entity. So it's a messy one, but I think they just do it and hope that enough people go, oh crap, this is something else I have to pay. And then they actually pay it. So basically one of the other things happening, BC is looking to support Newfoundland. Newfoundland put out a lawsuit back in early May saying that equalization sucks and that they don't think that it's taking into account for the fact that they have a distributed population and that other provinces might have distributed populations and that they need to be seeing more equalization based on that and less of it going to Quebec and Ontario. And BC got up there and said, yeah, you're right. We agree with you. And just kind of interesting.
That's big news.
It's kind of interesting too because we're seeing kind of this unification of all the premiers. And I know we'd mentioned last week that the premiers were in Halifax, our hometown here. And what was really cool was seeing some of the highlights from their press conference. And so I captured a couple of them. So basically it was Feds stay in your lane. You know, stop trying to do what we're supposed to be doing. And this has kind of been the rhetoric of Alberta and Ontario and Nova Scotia for a while now, but it really came out strong. And so they basically started talking about the duplicate services that the government has been creating. They specifically mentioned, you know, dental care, housing and childcare. And they were saying that, you know, we have programs in place that if you only would have just supported, we could have expanded that and done it more effectively, more efficiently, because we know our populations, which, duh. Yeah. Like, come on. But the problem is that the federal government can't cut a ribbon on the fact that they gave more money to the provinces to do a good job. So, and what was also interesting was that it was the Conservative premiers, you know, Ford, Houston, Smith, all saying, stop working against us, work with us, be creative, partner with us. We're sick of you actively working against us, which, I mean, interesting, right?
Absolutely.
Pulling that partisan card at a provincial level.
Absolutely.
But I mean, stupid. But they also kind of started to talk about the fact that the government canceled a $33 billion infrastructure plan. So it was called the Investing in Community Infrastructure Program. And so that was supposed to go over 10 years. And basically what happened was that there was multiple community infrastructure projects, roads, water, hydro upgrades, that the provinces were planning for. And they were planning over a 10-year time horizon that all just got shuttered, and that they were then scrambling, because they had started some of them too, to then fund them and finance them in such a way that they could at least recoup some of the work that they had done and try and at least finish some of the projects, because they just didn't have the financial backing to do everything, because they were counting on a $33 billion investment over 10 years. And so what they spoke to was the fact, they said, you know, you just pulled the rug on us and left us with no option. Instead, if you would have actually partnered with us and we did it like a, you know, a profit, not profit sharing, but like where you equally contribute. I'm lost for words there for a moment, but basically we could have contributed equally, and then it would have been a less load on the provinces and the federal government, but it would have been a stable, secure funding stream for these projects. And they're just mad, right? Because it just, all the things that they said made sense. And then the last thing that they said that I thought was really cool was they were saying about how we should be co-locating infrastructure and economic infrastructure and federal infrastructure together to serve multiple purposes, and saying things like ports or rail lines or, you know, critical military infrastructure could be done in such a way that we would meet our NATO goals at the same time as meeting our economic goals. And one example that they gave, just really easy, was they said, you know, last year we had to call in the military to help with the forest fires. They said, why aren't we training our military specifically to respond to natural disasters in this country? Because then throughout the year, when we're not at war and they're not, you know, engaged in exercises and things like that, we could be supporting the Canadian public and have a really strong support for those who are affected by different disasters. And then in the times of war, we could have those individuals also be trained to go to war. And they were like, it would be a smart investment. And then we could actually look at enrolling people more and really appealing to folks, because then they could stay in their locations and just be, you know, basically the equivalent of a firefighter. And so it was just like, yeah, why aren't we training our military personnel to respond to natural disasters as a part of their basic training? I don't know. If climate is this bad as they're touting, why aren't we effectively using our military? Because right now what's happening, and I can say this as an ex-military member, like, it's just garbage right now. Like, during the off times, while you're not on an exercise, while you're not doing some kind of like a learning program, like they call it like QL3, QL4, QL5, depending on your trade. If you're not learning your trade and you're not actively deployed or on an exercise, you're kind of just doing nothing. It's like a lot of stand around, look busy. And that to me is just a waste of people's time. It's a waste of good tax dollars. And we could really be using these people to their full potential if we just rethought this a little bit more. But anyway, that was what the premiers had said. Last two things I'll get into. Going to the other side of the world right now, Bangladesh, massive unrest happening there right now. Huge protests. Protests to the point where they have national curfews that are being enforced by the military. And they have a media blackout. So they have no internet and no cell service right now across the country. Wild. And so what's caused all this is that there's been 150 people killed. 105 people killed because there's basically a hiring rule in Bangladesh government jobs right now where they've said that, what is it? It's 56% of government jobs there are devoted to special interest groups.
Like DEI?
Kind of. They have it broken down. It is
Similar
kind of
idea.
that. So they have a 5% quota for minorities, a 10% quota for women, quota for backward districts. I'm not quite sure what a backward district is. 30% for freedom fighters, children and grandchildren, and then only 44% going to those based on merit.
Wow.
So basically what's happened though is because 40% of the youth in Bangladesh are unemployed and not going to university, they're losing their minds right now because they're like, if I don't fit into this special interest group, I'm not going to get a job. And so they're losing it over there right now. So you have all these youths that are unemployed and they are, you know, looking at their future going, what am I going to do? Like, this was supposed to be a secure government job based off of the university I took, and now I can't because I don't fit this profile, and I have no chance of doing it anyway because I'm not whatever I'm supposed to be for this special interest group. So they're losing it, and then you have all the people who do fit into those categories that are fighting back, and so they've actually said this might be like a civil war in the making over in Bangladesh, and nobody's really talking about it because they've got this internet blackout, media blackout right now.
Yeah,
and so it's just leaking out.
Absolutely. Coming to a Canada near you, I'm sure they love the media blackout on this side of the pond, that we're not seeing much of it, because it is too close to home for us. It's a bit of an echo of what could happen here, of where, yeah, obviously it's not one-to-one in terms of comparison, but very similar issues why people are frustrated and annoyed. People believe in meritocracy in their souls. They really think that you should be able to earn things and get them. When you start just allotting based on what you look like or what you group you're a part of in society, you just get a job. Yeah, people don't like that. And I think this is a very stark warning for what could be coming if we keep pushing this in our policy.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because honestly, this is what could happen in Canada if we don't start looking towards our own systems and going, are these programs that are in place right now actually serving people? And it's interesting because I've heard a couple different thought leaders on this really talk about the fact that it was in place for a period of time when it was necessary, and that now it needs to evolve, and that now it needs to actually be looking more at socioeconomic status. Because what they were saying is that you could have a group of individuals who are in a certain community who are quite wealthy that would have more privilege and more access, more opportunity, more connections than somebody who is in a white community who's of a lower socioeconomic status, and you're disadvantaging those folks and keeping people down. And so that's where I fall. I think that this needs to really evolve and be ever moving towards a meritocracy, and that if you do it all at once, I think that you'll have outrage, and I don't think that it will go the way that you want it to. But I think that if you slowly start moving this back a bit more so that it is more focused, like I said, on socioeconomic status and raising people up, regardless of their creed, skin color, affiliation, orientation, that whole, kit caboodle. I think that, like I said, I think the money is a great equalizer, and that look towards that, because that's what the experts are saying, and I happen to agree with them.
We love experts. Depends what experts you're talking to, I guess. But we'll be moving on then to things that are happening in this country. So, about a month or so ago, people were getting fired up. People got a little upset. I think it was probably close to a month and a half now, where Toronto St. Paul's was lost by the Liberals.
Womp womp.
And people on the left were freaking out. They wanted Trudeau out. Please step down. You clearly lost control of the party. We're losing our seats. What is going on? We've had this one since the 90s. What is happening? And Trudeau says, I'm not leaving. And then you start hearing a lot of MPs are coming out. And we're talking about we're getting into the hundreds of MPs right now on the Liberal side. By hundreds, I mean 100 MPs were like, we need to see a reshuffle of cabinet. We need to see movement. We need this person out. We need this person out. We need this person out. If you don't do that, then we're definitely coming for you. So shortly after that, month and a half later, we had Trudeau has announced that he is reshuffling his cabinet again. Shout out Trudeau. Just doing a little casino shuffling. Figure out who else is going to come in. So the habit that this government has been in is, especially in Trudeau's time since 2015, is he brings in really strong people. He brought in really strong people to start out. Then when those strong people started doing their jobs, Trudeau's like, you can go. I don't like listening to you tell me that I'm wrong. So you can go. And then those people then filled in for those jobs. And those people finally started being like, hey, like those people lasted a little bit longer because they were more yes men for Trudeau. And then Morneau, one of the old finance minister, you can go. I don't know. You keep talking sense to me and I don't like sense. I want nonsense. So you can go. And then it just kind of kept backfilling with worse and worse candidates as time has gone on to now this is probably one of the shortest time frames between cabinet shuffles that people are thinking that Guilbeault's got to go. People are thinking Freeland's got to go. People are thinking Jolie's got to go. And we'll see where it happens. I imagine one of those three are gone in this next shuffle. We'll see what happens. So with that, as the backdrop of what's happening here, leaks were given to the media. The old Globe and Mail. Apparently, good old Trudeau was meeting with Carbon Tax Carney, as Poilievre would say. And they had a meeting where Trudeau was trying to convince him to be part of his government, be part of his cabinet. And this was a greasy move from a political perspective. And the one person I really love that called it out from the conservative side was Michelle Rempel-Garner being like, dude, they were having secret meetings. And Trudeau leaked this to the media to absolutely sewer Carney so that he cannot have a good shot at getting the nomination as a Liberal. And what Carney's been doing lately is, he's doing what he does. He's been in politics a long time. He's been waiting for his opportunity to get Trudeau out so he can go and take over the party. And Trudeau's like, well, if we know anything about this man, he loves ruining things. He loves getting his way, and he wants to make sure that he's the man and no one else is. And so this Trudeau decides to leak these meetings to the media to absolutely sewer any opportunity that Carney has to take over the party. And because now he looks like a bad guy if he doesn't want to join Trudeau's cabinet. If he's the guy who's going to save everybody, why are you not going to be a part of the cabinet now? Like, why not? It's looking a little rough. And Michelle did a great job of, I would say, about a 10-part thread. Yeah. Breaking all this down. And good for her, but wild.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that, honestly. But what I think is interesting is the fact that you've got Freeland, Guilbeault, Jolie, everybody's like, they've got to go. I don't know if they're going to go because this is my thoughts. Maybe Jolie, she could probably go and people wouldn't really bat an eye too much. Freeland is kind of taking all the heat right now off of Trudeau. Everybody's like, oh, everything's awful. It's a stupid Freeland. And it's calming people down from the F Trudeau flags and moving it almost onto Freeland a bit. So I don't know if he can get rid of her because he needs her to be
the punching bag.
And then you got Guilbeault, who represents his entire carbon tax scheme. Yeah. And if he gets rid of him, he's basically said, the environment minister has basically failed. Yeah. And so then it just makes him look bad then. But if he gets rid of Jolie, like I said, it's not going to be too much, whatever. Especially with the movement of Biden stepping down, it could be an easy thing to be like, we need to rethink a cabinet. And so, you know what I mean? I can't see him. I want to see Freeland and Guilbeault gone, but I don't know how he can do it. Maybe he will. Maybe they'll leave for, family reasons.
Maybe they'll contract COVID.
Maybe.
We'll see what happens. My prime minister's got COVID. I think it's just so. Politics is a greasy period. We had our firsthand experience being over there back in April of seeing what can happen and how things operate at times over there. But then just seeing clearly this is a totally political scheme to really screw anybody over taking over Trudeau. And that's just what ticks me off about this guy is he's clearly not a team player.
Yeah.
Like it's just, he will burn that party to the ground before he leaves. Like he'd rather burn it to the ground before he might just leave voluntarily. Like just that's how he rolls. And like, I'm like, if I'm a Liberal member and I'm like a true Liberal member, I'm going to remember all this to make sure you know who you're voting in as your leader moving forward, because that guy's got this party hostage, man.
I know.
He's not going nowhere.
Like, honestly, the only person who could change any of this is Jagmeet Singh. If he stopped supporting the Liberals, then it would throw everything up in the air. I don't know. It would be a wild time. I would love to see it. We won't see it because the pension's not in yet. But yeah, as far as what power the Liberal members have, none. Like absolutely none right now.
They can do nothing. There are numbers of 150 as much yelling for a cabinet reshuffle, and all they did was get a reshuffle. So we'll see who leaves and who stays. And what if he just keeps all the same names, just moves them in different departments after?
Oh, probably.
He'd probably do that.
I could totally
reshuffled. You told me to reshuffle. Yeah.
When you shuffle cards, you don't throw away half the deck.
No, definitely not. Freeland, she's environment minister now.
Mr. Speaker, let me be clear. Not like our atmosphere.
and Guibault, he's our immigration officer now. He's an immigration department. Let's go. And well, you know, moving on from there. Gee, that's how it would go, man. These people are cracked. But moving forward here, the left, speaking of the left being a little crazy, they're really upset with Pierre Poilievre. Not happy with his take on a tweet he had and a video that accompanied it, which I thought was very interesting. So he says, legalizing crack, banning plastic straws, welcome to Trudeau's wacko world. It's time to bring home the Canada we know and love. And this is a video he posted with this tweet.
Trudeau and the NDP have basically, in practice, legalized crack, heroin, cocaine. It's funny. They want to ban gas-powered vehicles. They want to ban cars. They want to ban hunting rifles. But they want to legalize crack. They even want to ban plastic straws. If you're allowed to smoke crack, you just can't do it through a plastic straw. If you're going to smoke crack or snort cocaine, please do it in an environmentally responsible way with a paper straw. That is the rule. On my common sense plan, we'll ban hard drugs and put the money into treatment and recovery to bring our loved ones home drug-free.
The responses to this were, what is your solution to the global drug crisis? And but more so people were saying that he's a liar. Now, this is not true. Trudeau didn't legalize crack. This guy is irresponsible. He should step down from the leadership, as they always ask whenever he does anything that frustrates them. And they are just saying that everything he said in this video was untrue. So we thought it would just be an interesting opportunity to ask Reg, from your perspective, sir, is he lying, or is he using sensationalism and using a bit of truth and expanding on it to make it sound really bad? Because we do have listeners who are in BC, who are in these communities, who are seeing parks filled with people who are in serious drug crisis and addictions, and things are not good over there. And it's because of laissez-faire laws, laissez-faire programs that just haven't worked. And in your case, you can say both are true, that this is really bad, but also what Poilievre said may not be the whole truth.
Yeah, so this is actually where I kind of disagree with this take with him. One, I thought he did a really good job when he said that, you know, the smoking through an environmentally friendly school. Like that was well done. I'll give him that. Like I can look at that and go, okay, that's funny. What is challenging about this subject though is that there's elements of that are completely wrong, and there's elements that are 100% true. Like the fact that you have people using drugs in playgrounds, in hospitals, in public spaces, like that's the problem, right? And really, when you look back at this, like what happened? So basically, BC was like, we're going to follow the Portugal model. And for those who don't know, the Portugal model was implemented in 2001. They basically looked at decriminalization, not legalization. So that's a big thing that they're probably going to harp about here too, is that the idea was that we're not going to legalize drugs, we're going to decriminalize them. And so basically what that meant is that possession of small quantities of drugs, so basically considered up to a 10-day supply, is decriminalized. And basically treated as an administrative offense rather than a criminal one. But trafficking and distribution are still illegal. You're not allowed to do that. So this is the Portugal model. And so basically what happened was that people who were caught with drugs were sent to what was called a Commission for Dissuasion of Drug Addiction. So that's a lawyer, a social worker, and a medical professional. They had a team of 3 people that worked with these individuals who were found with drugs. And so they were then also sent to treatment centers, employment centers, and they were kind of basically guided through the supports that would get them housing, employment, and even education in some instances. But the big focus was on like, how do we medically help you? And then how do we build support services around you so that you don't fall back into that situation? And they had great success. But context is everything too. This was 2001. This isn't 2021. And so basically what happened was that at that point in time, we weren't just on the heels of a massive pandemic. We weren't experiencing the homelessness crisis that we're experiencing. We weren't seeing joblessness like we're seeing. And so all these crises that are happening right now are what feed addiction, because we know that. And so basically when you look at when Oregon tried to do this, they tried to do that in 2021. And they called it Measure 110. And so the possessions of drugs were classified as a civil violation similar to a traffic ticket. So they said that they were going to establish these addiction recovery centers, or ARCs, to provide immediate access to screening, assessment, intervention plans, and linkages to services. And so what they saw, though, was they had an initial increase in overdose deaths. And they're still looking at it now, but they were saying that it is in line with the national average of deaths at that point in time. But when you zoom out again, what was the big context? The big context was the pandemic. And so the other thing that they were criticized heavily for was they said, you told us that you're going to build these ARC centers, the addictions recovery centers, and they never built them, or the ones that they built were so far delayed. And so they decriminalized and, said this was going to be okay, but didn't provide the support services in time for people. And so basically you saw people go, okay, well, it's decriminalized now, I can use, and die. And so also too, they went, there's a pandemic going on, the world feels like it's ending, I've got nothing to offer, why not use drugs? So it's a problem of support services, a problem of purpose, a problem of context. And then you got BC, and in Canadian fashion, we did it haphazardly, where we did not provide the support services because we don't have them. If anybody who is not addicted or not experiencing mental health crises or not experiencing all these different things knows, you can barely get in to see a physician right now, let alone, the massive swath of individuals who are now addicted, who are in crisis. And it's a crisis that follows suit with economic conditions, with housing conditions, with access to medical professionals, with access to programs. Like all these things we know have gone downhill really quickly. When you see the amount of people who are using food banks right now, that does something to people's psyches, right? And sometimes people just want to just forget about it. And what happens is then they get addicted, and the drug supply right now, we know, is more toxic than it's ever been. And so then what they thought was maybe a dose that they could handle then becomes a lethal dose. So it's just, and then you have instances too where they were trying to do safe supply in BC, and safe supply is actually something I'm not really on board with. I don't know what you do with that right now. I don't have enough knowledge to form a good opinion. To me, I'm still kind of like sitting in that, and I don't know what to do with that. Decriminalization to me makes sense, because if you tell somebody who's already in the throes of addiction that now you're going to have a criminal record and good luck integrating into society when you couldn't do it before when you didn't have one, like that's just going to push them right back into drugs and addiction. So I think that's stupid. So the problem with what Pierre Poilievre is saying is that, like, I think that the intent of this could be good if it was done well, if it was done on a small scale, and if it was done with the right supports in place. And even then you'd still be fighting an uphill battle because of the mess that this country is in right now. And because nothing is disconnected. The drug crisis is related to the housing crisis, is related to the economic crisis. It's all connected. And so I think that working on infrastructure, working on the economy, working on making sure that people have access to secure food, all of that helps the drug crisis. It helps make it better, because when people have safe shelter, good jobs, and food on the table, they're not going out there for their next hit. And we know that based off of study of addiction. So I see it as kind of a cheap win for him to kind of throw that out there for people who are struggling and who are also being affected by those struggling with addiction. Because I'll be honest, like, I see the tent cities around Halifax, and there's needles everywhere and people defecating in like the parks and things like that. And you're like, how do I bring my kids around that? How do I enjoy that space as well? And it's frustrating, it's disheartening, and it's unfortunate. But like I said, it's all connected. And so you can't do something like this if you don't support it well. And doing it in this haphazard way that they did kind of actually did a disservice to the fact that you could do it well, and they just didn't. And again, like I said, there is factors out of their control. Like, they didn't think they were going to have a prime minister to tell them that the budget was going to balance itself, and we're going to bring in millions of people, and we're going to cripple the system. Like, they had no way to expect that, right? So also maybe kind of, I think that a little bit of it too was spaghetti at the wall, because they were already dealing with such a crisis after the pandemic that they were just willing to try anything. But it's disappointing, honestly. And I think that I was disappointed with that message from Poilievre, because I disagree with it. And I think that it sends the wrong message. But you know what? That's where it's at.
Yeah. So what I gather from all of this is what's going on with the drug crisis or more so what you talked about in terms of the safe supply or the decriminalization, more so you're getting at, is going to be in the same problem as the Liberal Party of Canada. Completely ruined by Trudeau, that no one's going to touch with a 10-foot pole for years and years to come.
Yeah.
Because it was done poorly, not well thought out, and done at a terrible time where you had more people who were more subject or had more potential for drug addiction because of stuff we're going through. And now we got all of our parks filled with craziness and things that we just don't want to see, unfortunately. But here we are. And that's kind of like, I 100% see, that's kind of what I'm seeing right now, is just this decriminalization. If it was, as you said, smaller sample size, more thought through, figured out kind of what the steps were going to be between things, how you were going to move people through the system, through the program, this, that, the other. Like, that could have maybe gone better. But no, you just kind of did a whole blanket experiment. Didn't go well at a very tough time in our history of what we're going through. And now, when Poilievre gets into power, that will be done away with. And I'll be curious to see what his solution is. I'll be honest. I'll be curious about how his government tries to address that issue in BC specifically, but as well across the country. But decriminalization is never going to be tried here again for at least 15 years after they get in power. It's just worth it. So they almost, people who are trying these new, trying to spearhead these new ideas, like, just think through what's going on and really try to have a very thoughtful idea of how you're going to approach it. Because you could screw yourself for a good chunk of time. Yeah,
and I think what's unfortunate too is just the fact that when you think about addictions and you think about what's happening with these folks, they're already in a vulnerable state. And then I blame the media again in this instance, where you have like them basically being told, somebody who's already in a vulnerable state where they might be down on their luck, they might be, might have lost their job. And then we got the media screaming at them, the economy is terrible, and the earth is burning right now. Like, the world is going to end in the next 50 years because we decide to drive a gas powered car. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this kind of stuff. And then they're just like, what's the point? You have to have people actually choose recovery. And if you're constantly screaming at people that everything's awful and the world's going to end, why would they choose recovery? Right. Who cares? Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is where I get so frustrated. And it's what we talked about last week about purpose and about community. And I often wonder too, I'm like, I know from personal experience what addiction and that does to a family. I've watched it. And I know Jennifer has kind of like talked about that too on her side. It's not pretty. But for recovery to be successful, people have to choose it. You can't force people into systems. I know Danielle Smith talked about that, and I'm like, I totally disagree with you, lady. I think that's completely wrong. You can't. Like, people will go through the system, get on the methadone, and as soon as they're out of your sight, they're going to jump right back onto whether product that they were using before. So people actually have to choose it. And people do choose it under the right conditions with the right supports. And some people don't. And that's the unfortunate reality. And so we just have to have a plan to deal with like those who can't or don't or won't or whatever their stage they're at, but then really support those who are right on that cusp of being able to get better. And putting a lot of effort into that to help those individuals and being really strategic about how we do things so that those individuals who are on that, razor's edge of like either going really badly or really well, that we're not throwing them a criminal record, that we're not, putting them in this situation where they're going to be worse off. And so that's why I'm really cautious watching what's going to happen, because like you said, I've heard kind of the potential solutions coming out of conservative thought leaders, and I'm not a fan. I'm still going to vote for Poilievre because he needs to fix the other things, because we're not going to get anywhere on addiction if we're still in such a crappy society, right? So, because like I said, it's all connected. But yeah, for this one to me is an L take. I'm just disappointed. Womp womp.
Father Reg is disappointed with Poilievre. Okay, gotcha. Sounds good. Oh, gee. Yeah, I hear you, brother. Well, I'm moving on to other things.
Another happy topic.
Yeah. Our Canadian labor market is in a tough spot. But what I think is really interesting is more so the entry-level jobs that people are hurting in at the moment. Right now, we're kind of looking more so those ages, 15, 19 years old, and 20 to 24. Like those age groups are really struggling. Like we're seeing like their unemployment rates are spiking like crazy. Since January 2023, the unemployment rate for Canadians aged 15 to 19 have increased from 12.2 to 17.1% in May 2024. For those aged 20 to 24, not to be confused with the year, the unemployment rate has risen from 8.2 to 10.2%. And for the 15 to 24 age group taken as a whole, the unemployment rate has increased from 9.7 to 12.6%. And they are being replaced and being used in spite of them, or sorry, in spite. In their place, instead of hiring them, our kids, to be able to these entry-level jobs in like service industries or this, that, the other, we are then in turn hiring temporary foreign workers who don't have to be given the same type of rights, don't have to be given the same amount of care. You just kind of pay them base level, the government subsidizes the rest, and then you can just send them on their merry way and they can go back to their country, or, they can find residency somewhere else in the country. So it's a really kind of an ugly cycle that's happening right now, especially with our young people. And that's why like people, we'll talk about the elephant in the room, where it's like, yeah, like why am I seeing like less Canadians working like at Tim Hortons? Why am I seeing less like Canadian kids working at these entry-level jobs? Well, this is part of the problem, is part of the reason. It's like, it's not because, it's just like everyone decided we're all going to hire international workers. It's because, well, the government's subsidizing this and people have, it's a tough economy right now. Franchises, stores are prioritizing the bottom line. There's like, well, this is a way I can save some money and get some good help. That's what I'll do. And that's what is leading to Canadian kids not being able to get entry-level jobs right now.
Yeah, it's really interesting too, because I think his name is Roly Poly Panda. The guy.
What a name.
I know that's his TikTok handle, but he's really, really well versed on everything like immigrant crisis and Canadian policies around it. Because he was kind of basically the one that started talking about the fact, he's like, I'm an immigrant. I came here legally years ago, and this is all the crap that I had to go through in order to come here and become a Canadian citizen. And then he was like, these guys are just barging in. But he kind of actually did talk about that this morning a little bit about the temporary foreign worker crisis. And he's like, it's exploitive of everyone.
Absolutely.
It's exploiting the temporary foreign workers. It's exploiting the Canadian youth. He's like, nobody is winning in this besides the businesses that are getting this very cheap, low cost, low skill labor.
It's like
low
key slavery.
Yeah,
crazy.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And so the other part of it too is like, what's happening is that, like you said, the Canadian citizens, the youth, they are demanding, rights, and they are demanding that they have their employment rights respected, and they have to have certain workers' compensation packages and things included, right, that any Canadian worker would get. And then these foreign temporary foreign workers aren't entitled to a lot of that, and so they don't have to pay the same kind of premiums for these folks, and so it's a very easy cost-benefit analysis for them. And oftentimes they will work, the 24 hours in a row. That is very much illegal, but they're not going to say anything because they don't want to lose that position and then get kicked out of the country. Because to them, they're looking at this as a way to guarantee their PR. So they're going to work all the crappiest shifts that nobody else wants to do and demand no extra pay for it, not get paid overtime. And they're just going to do all these things that the Canadians won't do. And that's what we're seeing happen. And I think that part of this, I'm going to blame the government too, on the fact that if you keep increasing the costs of inputs for these businesses are still going to maintain their profitability. They're just going to cut corners in other places. And this is it.
Yep, that's exactly it. And that's where, a lot of the conversations happening around where people are confused. Like I'm in I don't know, probably 5 different community Facebook groups, spanning across the different parts of Nova Scotia. And this conversation comes up probably once every couple of weeks where it's like, what is happening? Like, why can't my kid get a job at Tim Hortons right now? Like, why can't they keep applying at all these spots and they don't even get an interview. And then, the conversation that comes back, it's like, but then it's like, where are all these people coming from and how are they getting jobs? What is happening? And it's like, this is the politics behind it right now. This is why it's happening. And it's, as you said, exploitive of everybody involved. It sucks for everybody involved. And it comes back down to terrible policy by this federal government that's screwing us 6 ways a Sunday. And what can you do? Well, we can vote next year. That's the place to start and to try and get this stuff under control and figured out.
Yeah, and honestly, I've been hearing and having the same kind of conversations, and I don't blame the temporary foreign workers. They're doing what they can to try and get ahead in life. And, if I was in their shoes, I'd probably be doing the same thing.
Yeah, totally.
So I don't blame them, but I do blame this government for its bad policies, because basically what you're telling these people is you're faking the promise of them getting a PR, and then some might, because we saw the mass immigration in this country in the past couple of years, but a lot of them won't. Mm-hmm. And they'll just, like you said, just keep churning them through until they've used up all of their ability, and they either become disheartened or they don't have the money to pay for the expensive life that they have to lead in Canada now, and they have to go home, or their temporary foreign worker time in Canada runs out and they just get sent back, and they get sent back demoralized and more broke than they were when they came.
Yeah. And
so I think it's disgusting.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Do you know what else is disgusting, sir?
Bank of Canada.
Bank of Canada, brother. What is going on here, brother? What is happening? Big reports came out, and you got some highlights you want to share with us. What is going on?
Yeah, so I took the top 8 from both reports that came out. So there was the Canadian Survey of Consumer Expectations, and then the Business Outlook Survey, the second quarter, one of that one. And it's not all bad. So we can take the fact that we just went through some really heavy topics and add some lightness a little bit to this, because there's some crappy things in there, but there's also some hope. So what we're seeing, consumers are expecting inflation to return to 2% in the next 3 years. Wage growth decreased, not ideal. Consumers are reducing their discretionary spending on dining and travel, and they're also reducing their spending on durable goods. So that's like furniture, a washer and dryer, electronics, things like that. They call something that would last the next 3 to 5 years as a durable good. So that's not great for businesses. And so most consumers are actually expecting interest rates to remain high, with 60% of them anticipating further rate hikes, which I thought was interesting.
That is interesting.
Because, we're seeing rate decreases right now, but people are just not buying it. They're like, no, false flag. We're going to be lied to.
Yeah, it's common. Yeah, I've been seeing that too. The general public really believes, even regular people I'm talking to right now really believe that we're going to see more rate increases. And I'm like, no. Like, everybody in finance right now is saying we're in the decrease mode right now. Yeah. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Credit conditions have tightened, with 40% reporting difficulty accessing credit, which is up from 35% the last time they surveyed. But the savings rate is up, which I thought was really cool. So 45% said that they're prioritizing emergency savings over other financial goals. So we're actually seeing people return to savings, which is a good thing. Mm-hmm. Not great for trying to boost an economy, but as far as, you know, trying to get personal debt loads and things like that down, it's a good move. So consumers are pessimistic about economic growth, and then the confidence in government economic policies remains very low, with only 30% saying they have confidence in the government's economic policy, which to me feels high.
Yeah, 30% too high much. 30% too much. Gee.
So what does that look like for the businesses? Businesses, they expect sales to remain weak. They are looking at their own investment plans and saying that because of the uncertainty in the economy, that they're going to keep focusing on just maintaining business as usual and not expanding. It's not what we want to see. Labor shortages are near survey lows. So beforehand, what that means is that, you know, they were showing massive labor shortages. We're not seeing that anymore. It's at almost an all-time low for occupancy. And so employment outlooks are subdued, meaning that because everybody's kind of got a job that needs it, or that needs to be filled on the side of the business side, there's not much room for people to find employment. So that's not really great for the consumers. Wage growth expectations have decreased. And so the average expected increase is significantly lower. So meaning that they're not passing out the bonuses or the raises like they used to. And firms are actually setting taxes and regulation, particularly the carbon tax, as top concerns. And so investments in digitization and green initiatives are contributing to spending, but remain small. So what this means for businesses and consumers. So for the consumers, that's us. Adjust your spending habits, obviously. So with higher prices, you know, basically trying to prioritize that essential spending over the discretionary spending, which we all know. But boost your savings. So if you can, put a little bit of money away here and there, a little bit at a time. They're saying at least 6% of your income, focusing on having an emergency fund. And then evaluate your credit options. This is one that I thought was super important because depending on where you bank or who you're banking with or what instrument you're using, you could be in for a lower rate if you change. There could be also introductory programs or switching programs. I know I was looking at the fact that I was paying, I think it was like 9% on a particular debt instrument that I was holding. I moved it to another institution with another program. I dropped that down to 6%. So it's things like that that you have to kind of put in that extra work in the background to make sure it's like, do I need this to be a line of credit? Do I need this to be a loan? Does this need to be with Scotiabank or could this be with RBC? And so making those kind of choices and then shopping around because the banks want your business.
Yeah,
they want your money. And then for business owners, manage your investment cautiously. Right now is not the time to expand, which we're seeing from what they've said. And so creating adaptive pricing strategies, if you can, offering multiple price points for different entry services, different entry points into services. And then this one was kind of the sad one, but optimizing workforce utilization. So what they looked at with this was basically, you know, if you can invest in your people to make sure that they're the most productive they can be, go that route. If you're a business owner and you're looking at your staffing costs and saying, you know, I don't know if I can maintain this level of staffing, then that's a whole other question you have to look into. Obviously, that's like worst case scenario, but staffing costs are some of the highest costs that businesses face. And so being prudent where you have to be, unfortunately. But all this said, though, there is, like I said, some hope at the end of this is that what we're seeing from businesses and consumers, the expectation that things are actually going to start to look up within the next 2 to 3 years. I wonder if that will coincide with a government change.
I'm sure it will.
But
anyways,
it is going to be a hard stormed weather right now. But we are seeing a little bit of light at the end of that tunnel with things starting to get better.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's a kind of good understanding of kind of where the Bank of Canada is seeing things, what's on the horizon here, what consumers are feeling, what businesses are feeling. as you said, as Reg said here, yeah, we're kind of in a tougher season, but it's not like kind of what we're talking about when we were doing shows in 2022. It's like, oh, tough times are coming. We're in the tough times right now, and we're actually closer to our way. We're closer on our way out than we are on our way in at the moment. So that's some good news. If you're feeling pain, we feel it with you, but things are getting better. They are,
and be creative. I think that was the biggest thing I took out of this, was like really be creative. If you're a business owner or if you're a consumer, find the ways that you can save money and that you can find money and that you can cut the amount that you're paying out to others, whether that be banks or debt instruments or things like that. Even as a business, you shop around because there are things out there to be had. And like I said, businesses, banks want your money. So there's things out there.
Totally. Well, as we finish off here, we had to get into it. Secret Service, Kimberly Cheadle, head of the Secret Service, getting grilled.
This. I absolutely love this. We couldn't put them on the roof.
Yeah. And we will actually give a shout out here. We'll actually post a link here. If you get a chance, Tim Dillon, comedian, he did a 1 hour kind of whole breakdown of what happened with the assassination attempt. And it was definitely humor and comedic levity that I definitely needed through this whole thing. I was laughing so hard through it all. Like, he did a good job breaking down what happened and this absurdity of everything we've been hearing and seeing. And he just cracking so many jokes. It was so good. But yeah, we finally, exactly what we needed here. Kimberly Cheadle, head of the Secret Service, grilled on what were their strategies. Why wasn't somebody placed on the roof? Why wasn't more done? Why weren't more preventative measures put in? And then you have here Representative Nancy Mace being probably the most lack of political thought put into her answers.
Audacious. Yeah. The most audacious.
That's a great way of putting it. Very audacious way where, Cheadle is giving her political answers. And Mace said, this is, quote, bullshit, and you are full of shit. In committee. She said this, and then obviously the chair's like, we have to keep some type of decorum here. And she was like, whatever, it was getting hostile. And then we had a second individual and a representative who called Kimberly Cheadle, quote, a DEI horror story. So, ooh. And what does DEI stand for? Didn't earn it. And so that's kind of what we're here for. So it was just kind of a big, wild time. All the highlights are on Twitter for you to view and see. It seems like Reg is really bought in and wants to see some of it right now. We'll watch some of this. We'll watch the first minute.
Answers. Most of my questions are going to demand a yes or no answer. Do you understand?
I do.
Okay, my first question. Both sides of the aisle today have asked for your resignation. Would you like to use my 5 minutes to draft your resignation letter, yes or no?
No, thank you.
Was this a colossal failure?
It was a failure.
Yes or no? Was it a colossal failure is the question, yes or no?
I have admitted this is a terrible...
This is a yes or no series of questions. Was this a colossal failure, yes or no?
Yes.
Was this tragedy preventable, yes or no?
Yes.
Has the Secret Service been transparent with this committee?
Yes.
Would you say the fact that we had to issue a subpoena to get you to show up today as being transparent, yes or no?
I have always been
yes or no. You didn't want to answer the question. Committee. We had to issue a subpoena to get you to show up today. That is not transparent, by the way. You stated earlier, Secret Service is not political. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, would you say leaking your opening statement to Punchbowl News, Politico's Playbook, and Washington Post several hours before you sent it to this committee as being political, yes or no?
I have no idea how my statement got out.
Well, that's bullshit. So, Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record articles by Punchbowl News, Political Playbook, Washington Post, all done at 5:24 a.m., 6:12 a.m., 6:34 a.m., a solid 3 to 4 hours before this committee got your statement.
Without objection, so ordered.
Okay. Is the Secret Service fully cooperating with our committee?
Yes.
Okay, you say you're fully cooperating with this committee. On July 15th, this committee sent you a list of demands of information that we wanted. Has the Secret Service provided this committee a complete list of all law enforcement personnel that were there that day? Have you done that? Have you provided a list to the Oversight Committee? Yes or no?
I will have to get back to you on that.
That is a no. Have you provided all audio and video?
It just keeps going, right?
I know.
Yeah, and that was the veracity and tenacity and renewed hostility they've had for the Secret Service and the head of it. And this goes back to kind of what we started off with the RNC stuff. Like, again, that was something with Trump I was really stunned by. He had every opportunity to throw the Secret Service under the bus. And he's like, no, they did a great job. They saved my life. Like, that's a different Trump. Mm-hmm. So that it's just, this whole thing is obviously a huge mess. And we're obviously going to keep following it as it keeps on doing its thing. But, gee, what a wild day today.
But you know what? That was so smart by him, mm-hmm. especially if he plans on being the next president. Yeah. I was going to say Prime Minister. If he plans on being the next president, like, you don't throw the people who are going to protect you under the bus. And he didn't. Yeah. So
smart move
by him. Very political, which is like a different side that I'm seeing. I'm like, this is very interesting.
He's almost acting presidential.
Yeah. It's weird. It's weird.
It's a weird.
And I wish that in Canadian politics we had this kind of level of audacity, like I said, towards members that we're questioning. Because I just keep looking at all the different things that Michael Barrett is going through right now with the Randy Boissonneau case and him going, how many Randys were there? And this idiot that he's got up there as a witness basically is just saying, well, there are two separate companies and between 2000 and 2001, there was only one. He's like, so this would be Randy Boissonneau, right? And he's like, it was a typo, I think. He's like, so was every single time a typo? And he's like, well, you see, between the times, I was like, why can't we have that? Just call them out, say it's BS,
move on.
Move on.
Yeah.
But I think that also too, like the Secret Service lady, like actually answered yes or no, where you would never get that out of witness in Parliament.
No, never. So I do admit, like, as much as like, I think she's a snake in the grass. I mean, the fact that she was actually answering yes or no to those questions was pretty impressive, which is a sad bar to set, but here we are.
Yeah, it's like, you did a bad job. You did a whole bunch of crappy things, but at least you're kind of owning them a bit here. So, like,
should be fired, but whatever.
Yeah, at least I don't hate you.
Yeah,
like,
true, true. Who's Randy? Anyways, oh geez. Well, that was a good episode, dude. Good episode. We got no wild cards for you this week, but
I know
it was a long enough episode as it was.
Yeah, so, exactly. Thanks for sticking with us.
Yeah, we love you all so much. So whatever it is you're doing, whether you be mowing the lawn,
watching Elevate podcast episodes,
or watching Michael Barrett grill Randy. Hooters you are, wherever you are. Love you. I can't speak, but we're out.